Oh, hello there. I want to talk about how to run stereo and what that means. And really quickly, just in case you don't know what that means that instead of running through from your guitar through your pedal board and out to your amp, which then has probably a mic in front of it and gets sent to the soundboard from there, instead you would run from your guitar into your pedal board, and then at the end of your chain you would have some stereo pedals, which just means pedals with two different outputs for left and right instead of just the standard one that you find on most. From your last pedal, you will run out to two different amps instead of one that'll have different mics on them, and they'll run to different channels on your soundboard. In terms of why you would do it or why people run stereo, you really just, if you've got a stereo pedal or one that could be run either way, like the Timeline here, or like any of the New Neighbor stereo stuff, or like another good example would be the RV5 reverb unit from Boss that's really popular and sounds great. Those are just going to sound much bigger sonically if they're going to two different places. I guess because they have kind of different paths for the left and right channels built into those pedals, and instead of summing them together and just sending them to the same source, you get to send them to different sources, and so they have different characteristics. I know there's plenty of pedals that have kind of like the ping pong delay sound, and those will actually ping and pong through the two different amps, which is super cool. So anyway, in terms of doing it or not, if you've got the space and you've got the means, you will not be upset if you do it, because it really does. We just started doing it and it sounds way bigger in terms of the effects, and it's really cool. I'm even doing it with a crappy amp. Like, I have one really nice tube amp, and then I have another just solid state tiny little Vox practice amp, and it's still worth it just because they sound pretty different. That would be the other reason to do it, is if you can get two amps that sound kind of different, then your signal's getting a blend of both of those instead of just one. So for example, if you had like a cleaner amp and maybe a one that was slightly dirty, or even the same amp run a little different, when you hear it in your ears or in your monitors or however you're doing it, it's just going to sound bigger, and it's going to sound like a more interesting and complex sound because it's a blend of two different things. But enough of that. So on to the actual how to run stereo. There's kind of two parts of it: how to do it from your board, and then how to do it kind of from your amps to the house. And it's super easy. It's not very complicated to do. Like I said, you just need one or more stereo effect pedals, and they have to be the last ones in your signal chain. And typically, they're going to be the things that are stereo. I mean, delay, reverb, maybe like chorus or something. They might make a few other ones, but they're typically the kinds of effects that you want to be last anyway, so it's not like you're sacrificing, or I haven't seen any stereo overdrives yet, but I'm sure it's just a matter of time before that happens. So anyway, what you do, the way that the path works on my board, it's kind of stupid the way it is. It's just the way that I wanted it and the way that made the most sense to me. So we're coming out of the POG here into the carbon copy, and then we're going from the carbon copy to the timeline, from the timeline to the slate here, and which is reverb, just in case you need to know that. So I was running this signal mono, which I was up until some time ago. I just came from the POG in and out through here, came into the left or mono input, and then just out of the left of the timeline into the one or left on the slate, and then out of the one. And you can see right now I'm at home and I only have one of my amps here. And so I'm just going out mono, even though I'm running stereo up to that point. It's going to sum them at the end and send them out to the one amp. Whereas when I go to my church where the other amp is, it's going to be coming out of both sides. So basically you can kind of see how it works. You're just, as soon as you start the stereo chain, once you get to the first one, you're only going to have one input because it's just come from the last mono pedal that you got there. But then you get your two outs going into your two ins here, and the only thing you want to do is make sure that the left is connected to the left and the right to the right. That's really all it is. And on this one it's marked 1 and 2, but it's still left and right. So as long as they're going to the same paths, then you're good, and then you're all set in terms of your pedal board. And like I said, you then take your outputs, one to one amp and one to the other, wherever you're running them. So pretty easy on that end. On the end of the amps, Again, you're just running your cables to your amps like you probably would anyway, and then you're miking them separately. So they need to be sent to separate channels to your soundboard. And then the way that really makes this work, both in your ears and out in the audience, is to pan those two signals. And panning is just means sending a signal to the left or right of your speakers. So one of your amps you want to pan all the way to the right and one all the way to the left. And it's kind of the same thing in your ears or whatever monitoring system you're using. You want to pan them both in your ears too. So you only want to hear one amp in one ear and the other amp in the other ear, if that makes sense. And then you just control both of those. Your overall guitar level would be with two sliders or faders instead of one. And sound people will know what that means, and you usually don't have to worry about it too much. The thing you have to worry about is convincing them to do it, because it can be a little bit of a challenge. And it's a little different to mix, but if they're panned and you control them both with the same sliders, it's really not all that much different fundamentally. So, but anyway, that's how you do it. And I promise, if you have the resources, like I said, even if it's using a crappy practice amp or something like I'm doing, it still makes a world of difference in what you're hearing, especially from your delay and reverb type effects. And you will not regret it, even though it can be a pain to get it set up and running, just in terms of resources, having to have extra mics and run extra channels and all that stuff. But if you can do it, I think you will be extremely happy with the results. So give it a shot if you have the means, and that's how to do it. So hope that was informative. If you have any other questions or something I forgot to cover, feel free to post it in the comments, and I'll promise to reply to those. And that's really it. So feel free to subscribe if you want to spend 5 minutes with some other kinds of gear or look at some more how-tos for some random stuff. And other than that, bye-bye.